So basically, modern discourse at this point is just a massive multi-billion-dollar grievance economy. Pretty much anywhere you look is some dim-witted grifter that's trying to sell you some customized flavor of cope, wherein the goal is almost always the same, which is zoom out far enough so that all of your personal failures or struggles or issues can vanish and dissolve into a systemic blob, ensuring that you never actually have to look in the mirror or never actually identify things and label them as they actually are. On one end, you have the tradcon grifters who will tell you that, the nuclear family is the magic bullet, whereas on the flip side, the gender Marxist will tell you that the nuclear family is actually a patriarchal prison, yet both are actually missing the point in drinking the same poisoned well. Because reality will tell us from just a simple glimpse that plenty of functional, healthy people have emerged from broken or single parent homes, and plenty of degenerate, neurotic losers have come from traditional two-parent setups. The shape of the household doesn't necessarily matter quite so much if the structures inside of it are impulsive and or idiotic. Obviously, yes, there is plenty of data that suggests that ideally under great circumstances, one would be better. But if we actually look at the world we live in right now and how we can't go backwards, we can't turn back the clock, and instead try to turn things into actual solvable, winnable problems and address and control what we can control, then we start to realize that maybe at a certain point it could maybe be a software problem and not necessarily as much of a hardware problem as we might have thought. But the problem there is that fixing the software firstly requires accountability, which is why people tend to flock to the grifters instead, because what ends up happening is essentially a horseshoe theory of absolute losers. On one hand, again, first you have the therapy speak mafia, which weaponizes clinical buzzwords like boundaries or narcissist or toxic to, in essence, avoid doing anything hard or experiencing discomfort, and really using these things as like a get out of jail free card for basically being a somewhat selfish, immature, unreliable adult. Then next we have the, men going their own way, or the tradcon grifters, who are dudes trying to outsource their own mediocrity or their own dissatisfaction to feminism. They somehow believe that, a 1950s trad wife is going to somehow magically fix their lack of ambition, discipline, or social skills. It's really at a certain point just male victimhood wrapped in a Roman statue PFP. Then finally we have the misandrists and the systemic cultists. These people blame the patriarchy or late-stage capitalism because most of the time they have zero impulse control, make terrible life decisions, have no real focus, dedication, drive, or willpower, and instead just sometimes refuse to take the L. The funny thing here is that with all of these groups, they all fundamentally hate each other and they all fundamentally argue with each other, yet at the same time they all share the same exact core defect, which is that they've replaced character and simple human existence with ideology. And on that note, I just want to add in, if someone is actively mainlining love and relationship content at all from any of these camps, they are probably already completely cooked and in many ways hopeless and need to seriously think about unplugging. And if someone needs a 3-hour podcast or a TikTok to explain how to interact with another human being, then probably their baseline social software is fundamentally bricked. It's kind of like the romantic equivalent of hiring a corporate ESG consultant to do an assessment on your dating life to establish KPIs about vision creation and sustainability metrics for basic human attraction, which is in essence a meaningless word salad masking the fact that someone probably has a zero organic intuition, because healthy people don't actually need a syllabus to fuck, fall in love, or build a life. They can just read the room, they can just make decisions, they can just actually live. And if someone's taking notes on being, high value behavior or attachment styles, they probably aren't fixing their love life. They're just building a corporate PowerPoint for why they are single and why they probably will remain single. The reason that so many of these factions sell Patreon subscriptions as books is because the antidote to this shit is actually offensively boring, and it's terribly simple and completely unremarkable. It's probably a total snooze fest because there's inherently no grand systemic dragons to slay or no grand matrix to escape. The solution is in essence just basic adult maturity and having a basic adult understanding of the world in which that we actually do live within, and then making decisions from there, and then learning to function as an actual adult, meaning having some impulse control, having some actual forethought, and then sometimes being able to just take the loss and say, oh, I fucked up, instead of writing a 40-part, Twitter thread or Substack essay about how society failed you. Which in essence, people would rather join a cult than just do the dishes. They would rather wage a fake war against an invisible systemic enemy than just admit that maybe they make poor decisions and maybe their decision-making process is broken, or maybe their picker is broken. They don't need a movement, they just might need to grow the fuck up and stop with all of this insane cult childish nonsense. So here are the specific qualities that I'm actually referring to and prescribing. It's the unsexy, unmarketable, boring as fuck toolkit to be a somewhat functional adult. First is impulse control, which is learning to regulate and ignore your lizard brain and not just raw dogging massive life choices based on, a fleeting vibe or a temporary emotion. Second would be forethought, second order thinking, being able to actually look past this weekend and understand that our actions have compounding interest, both positive and negative. And then third, to be able to take the accountability, positive or negative, the lost art of looking in the mirror and say, yeah, I fucked up, that's on me, but how did I get there? No, no caveats, no blaming the matrix or the patriarchy or childhood traumas, but just actually eating the consequences of our own actions. Fourth would be organic intuition, learning to read the room, trusting basic human instinct and social calibration instead of treating relationships like an ESG audit with KPIs and meaningless word salad fucking frameworks. Fifth is personal responsibility, meaning being willing to do the mundane, boring work of life, doing the dishes instead of joining an ideological cult to explain why the dishes are oppressive. And then after those 5 qualities, here are just brutal baseline realities of human existence that people build entire ideologies and spend their entire life avoiding. First is that no one is coming to save us. No tradwife, no government grant, no systemic revolution, no perfectly calibrated polycule is going to fix our lives. The only person who can unfuck or fuck a situation to a large extent is us as functional adults. Number 2 is the universe seems to be completely indifferent, meaning it doesn't really care about our trauma or attachment style or lived experience. Fairness is a human construct, not necessarily a law of physics. Bad shit happens to good people. Good shit happens to bad people, and absolute scumbags win all the time. But that's not to say that that's all the time. It's just realizing that these things do happen, whether we like it or not, whether it sounds good or not, or whether it fits our Disneyland fantasy or not. And third, that most of life is just boring maintenance. It's not a cinematic arc. It's just doing the dishes, paying the bill, going to the gym, not being a total jerk off. And basically people invent ideological drama and systemic wars because they can't actually handle the mundane, unsexy grind of baseline existence. And in many ways, this is just a whole stress response that people are infinitely looped into that is just making them worse and worse and worse and worse over time. Fourth is you can't out-therapy bad decisions. You can reframe your bullshit all day, but if you keep making impulsive, low IQ, emotional, ideological word salad decisions, your life will objectively suck because ultimately cause and effect remains undefeated. Fifth is you are not the main character. Your feelings are not facts, and personal struggles are not necessarily a systemic crisis. You happen to just be another person on the planet trying to solve problems or live an effective life just like everyone else. But what ends up happening is they desperately want some sort of cheat code, some sort of scapegoat, or some sort of, priest-like person on high to write a paper on why their life is hard, when in actuality, Maybe it's sometimes just as simple as the truth is just gravity. If you drop the ball, then it will hit the floor.